Hey, Book 2, welcome to Jackie's Literary Corner. I am Jackie. So, I originally filmed this video, last week. We went to visit my grandmother this week, and I attempted to film this before we left, but for some reason, again, it did that thing where I finished filming on my Mac and everything, and then the camera I used, it didn't, do anything. The screen was white. And I don't understand that. I don't know if the videos are too long, or whenever my screen goes black, is that why? Because it does that or something? I don't know. But I don't understand all this technology stuff. I'm not a tech person. I'm just a millennial who knows how to use this kind of stuff, that has some idea how to, knows enough to be able to hang out on here and do stuff like this. I would have to ask, someone like my cousin, and I don't want to bother him with stuff like that. So, if ever I have a reason to, then I will, I'll talk to him about it, or talk to someone else. But anyway, the other problem I just realized is, for some reason, a few Christmases ago, I got a ring light for my parents, and now it's finally dead. And I'm annoyed, because it was starting to act funny. Every time I would hit the plug-in area, it would go out or something, and then the little light that showed that it was working, the little blue light would come on, it would appear again, and it would be fine. And I did even talk to my dad about it, and then of course he plugs in, and then all of a sudden it's fine again. So for a while it was great, until just now I realized that it's not. So I don't have a ring light. I don't even know if that really makes much of a difference. I remember the first time I started using it, someone did comment that they didn't care about the ring light, or they didn't like it, but I kept using it because it was a gift from my parents. It was like, let me keep it, and I kind of liked it, but I don't even know if it really makes a difference. So, and I'm not going to bug them about getting me another one or anything. I'm just annoyed that it's finally died on me again, for officially. So, I am going to update you guys on my reading. I did get a book a few days before we went to visit my grandmother, and I didn't bring any of I did bring one of the books I was in the middle of reading with me on this trip, and that was, let me get it out of my tote bag. Which was, I brought Guns of August with me, but I didn't read much from this. I only read a little bit just to finish the chapter I was on, because they're long chapters, because they're explaining, Barbara K. Tuchman is explaining in detail of all the military actions that each country took in vivid detail, and it takes, of course, a lot of describing exactly play by play how everything went. And so I understand why the chapters are long. And the good news is they have paragraph breaks within the chapter, so that really helps. Because, if I'm reading this, if I take this to work and read it during my break, my 15-minute break, then I only have 15 minutes. I mean, maybe even less than that, because I have to walk back to the break room, and there's an upstairs. And then when I'm eating, a lot of times that slows down my reading. I don't know about other people, if they have that problem. But when I'm eating or drinking, either I neglect what I'm eating and drinking, or it kind of slows down my reading. And then, of course, you're eating, even when you're eating finger food, you're going to get stuff on your fingers, like grease or something. One of the podcasts I think it was the Reading Glasses podcast, they did a test of what foods were the best to eat while you're on, what snacks were the best to eat while you were reading. So they used a really old book, and they got a bunch of snacks that potentially could be messy and make messy fingers, and they just kept touching the pages to see which ones were leave the least residue. That was just kind of fun episode, actually. It's funny hearing them talk about talking about these in detail, what the the different aspects of each of these foods. Like some of their foods were like Red Hot Cheetos or Lay's potato chips or Oreo cookies or something, or like some kind of candy. So that was fun. But anyway, so I don't have a lot to talk about this really. And it's and of course, since I'm always reading a lot more stuff, and if I don't read a lot of if most of my attention isn't focused on one of my, like, if my attention is not focused and I'm reading a lot of other books with a book like this, then I'm not gonna, if I only read a little bit of the book, then I might not remember what I read. So that might have been a tricky thing to do, to bring a book like this with me. But I did want to make progress on it. So, I think it was from Germany's perspective, that the chapter, and they've already gone through Belgium. And I don't know. I mean, honestly, I can't. I mean, I am reading it, so I'm not just saying that. I'm genuinely just don't remember at the moment what exactly. But anyway, so I don't really have a lot to talk about this. And I finally started reading this, but I only read the introduction. It's not what I expected. Right now it doesn't feel like a traditional story. Like, we're meeting this family, the Heike family, and we're getting kind of their history up to the current, in the setting of the book, the current leader of the family, the head of the family. And we get a story about some of his concubines. And he already had one woman, but then he gets this other woman, and the two are like, well, I don't want to be around when you have this woman with you, because it wouldn't be fair. But then he says to the guy, says to the first one, I want to keep you, so you can send the other one away. And the woman does not. The first woman is not too happy about that. He's like, which I'm glad that they're not like competing with each other, in a sense that, oh, just get rid of the other one. I don't like her. It's not like that. They're like on the same side. And eventually the second one, she didn't like that. She did not like being cast aside, and not that and like I said, she doesn't want to take revenge on the first one, because she doesn't blame her. She blames the guy, and she doesn't like the position she's in. And her sister's like, well, I'm not going to abandon you. So wherever you go, I'm going to go with you. So they decide to be nuns. And so does their mom, because their mom needs them. Because without them, her mom has nothing, and she's poor. And so it was kind of like a little story, like different little stories. It made me think of Grace of Kings a little bit in its storytelling. And so, like I said, I didn't read a lot. And actually, I think the translator of this might have been one of the people who wrote A History of Japan, the book I read last year. I think she might have been the same author who wrote that. She and someone else. So that was kind of cool to, realize that I read one of her books. Or at least the book she partly wrote. So, those are the two that I have the least to say about, because I didn't read a lot of them. And, so the two books I took everything out. The two I focused most of my, I did make some progress on, I can't think of the title. War and Ruin. That's what it is. War and Ruin by Ryan Cahill. I did make a little progress on that on my Kindle. I read all that. I read On the Way There to my grandmother's, and On the Way Back. I read a little bit. I read a couple chapters. And a group, Callan and some of the other characters, are traveling through this desert-like place where it's like, there's these stories about people not coming out of there alive. And it really, when they're there, it really has this weird effect, this, like, all their negative emotions and feelings and their, come out. And they just want it to the point where they basically want to kill each other. But for some reason, Callan is not affected by this. And they're kind of anytime, and like all these negative feelings they have about each other, about Callan himself, come out, and they try to kill him at one point. So it's a very intense, angry chapter where there's a lot of anger, and I felt so bad for Callan because he's like, he already blames himself for what happened to his family. And he's already like, feels like he is a burden, and that he didn't choose to be this Draylade, this dragon rider. And he already told the others, you don't have to come with me. I'm going to save my friend. I'm going to go find my friend and save him. You don't have to come. In fact, I'm going on my own. But they are like, no, we're not going to leave you. You are the Draylade. You are too important to this war. We need you. So we're going to make sure you stay alive. And we also care about you. You are also our friend. But that kind of backfires. Like I said, all the negative emotion, all the anger, all the things that they might blame Callan for come out. And of course, they're thirsty, they're sweating, they're exhausted, and it's not great. And he can't ride on I can't remember what he calls his dragon. I mean, it's four books in, I do not remember what he calls his dragon. But his dragon, he can't ride her or him. I keep wanting, because of the way the coloring of the dragon, for some reason I'm thinking of the dragon as a girl, but the dragon is a male. And he can't ride him because the dragon is still healing from a previous injury, a fight, a battle. So he can't ride the dragon, so, and then we also, and I actually, even though I don't trust these guys that Rist is with, or at least the people that run this training, this academy or school or whatever you want to call it, I don't entirely trust them. But I really like those scenes. Because it's very academic. He's learning how to use magic. And I always think those scenes are kind of fun for me. And then trying, he has to pass these tests, and you don't know what's going to happen. Like I said, I don't trust these guys, and I'm nervous, and I'm worried that something's going to happen to him, to Risk, and they're going to completely turn him from Callan, and he's going to see Callan as a bad guy, and he's going to be on a different side than Callan. I'm very nervous about that. I think that's what they're trying to do, what Ryan Caulhill's setting up with Rist and Callan. And then we're a little bit with Ella, and she's grieving the loss because she thinks Callan is dead. She's learned that her parents are dead as well, and she's already lost her fiance. So she's very much grieving, and she's trying to stay strong, and she's so far not doing too bad. So she's not in a great, she's just not in the, and she's also learned something about herself. That she, in a way, has her own power. So that's always so that's what so far I got from that. And then the rest of my books we have The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. This is I attempted to read The Unseen World by Liz Moore, and I just wasn't ready for a book like that because there's a character that has, I remember hearing that the main character's father has dementia or what is the Alzheimer's, or at least dementia, and I just was not ready for that because my own grandfather had that, and he died in 2013, so I needed to wait before I wasn't sure if I don't know if I'll ever read that, and Um, but The God of the Woods is her most recent book. And this one takes place in the 70s. And although this next part takes place in the 50s and 60s. And it's about this family, the Van Laars, and they had created, they're a very wealthy family. Upper crust, New England rich people. Think like if you watch Gilmore Girls, they're like Emily and Richard Gilmore. And they created a camp, Emerson Camp. A camp for kids. And they in 75 they had lost one of their daughter, Barbara. They sent her to the camp. She was kind of a rebellious, acted out kind of kid, gotten very artsy, and so they decided to send her to the camp for the summer. And she ends up missing. But we are also told that back in the 60s they had a son, Bear. His actual name is Peter the Fourth, but they call him Bear. And he also went missing around that area where the camp was. And so we are in multiple perspectives. We've gotten the perspective of Bear and Barbara's parents. We've only gotten the perspective of their mom. We've got the perspective of some of the people, some of the young 20-somethings who work at the camp. I don't remember the name of the camp counselor. They're 20-something women. And one of them, she was actually in her own little love triangle where she was dating someone who was the godson of the Van Laars. But he wasn't around. She really couldn't be, she was kind of not part of his world of rich people. And she ends up, she feels neglected by him. He doesn't spend time with her, and she does not. And he's a completely different person, whether they're at the camp. And she ends up cheating on him with another boy, another counselor, and he catches them, and that pisses him off, which, of course, who would like the feeling of being cheated on? And so there's that little subplot, and she's also the one who was one of the counselors, along with her assistant, Annabelle. They were the ones in charge of the group that Barbara was a part of. And so they're gonna get blamed for Barbara's disappearance. And we also have the perspective of Tracy, who becomes Barbara. Her and Barbara sort of become friends. Tracy's very shy. She's a good singer. She likes to sing, but she's very, she keeps to herself mostly, and, she feels isolated because this is her first time going to the camp, so she doesn't have friends yet. She hasn't, and she's someone who really struggles to make friends, but Barbara, when she shows up, she and Barbara kind of become, form an attachment to each other. So there's that perspective, and we go back and forth between the present day when Barbara's missing, 2 months before the camp started, and 2 months after these events. But now part 2 is in the story of Bear and his disappearance. And the first couple chapters are Alice, the mom, when she's a young woman, and her and her sister meet the Van Laars family, and she ends up getting in a relationship with Peter the Third, and they end up getting married. So those are the parents of Barbara and Bear. And yeah, Peter's a family name. So their son is Peter the Fourth, but they call him Bear, like I said. And so we're getting her perspective, and she's like not exactly happy. She's often in the beginning of their relationship. Peter would kind of critique, tease Alice, how she didn't really fit in, how awkward she was, and how she couldn't do things right among his rich friends and family. But then you find out after a few years, he got kind of critical of her and mean to her and was not as attentive a husband. But he is pleased with her that she gave him a son, which is typical. And I'm wondering if, we also meet one more character where it's not her, we don't get her perspective, I don't think, but she's kind of manages the camp, and that's TJ Hewlett. She is the daughter of the family's groundskeeper. And she's a tomboy, so she gives, her name is Tessie Joe, but she changed her name to TJ as a non-androgynous name. So, because she's kind of embarrassed having such a girly name. But like I said, we don't get her perspective, because we get the perspective of the girl that was in charge of the group, Barbara's group. She's the counselor's perspective we get. I don't remember her name. Let me see if I can look for her name. And we also have two other characters, Carl and Jacob, but I don't know their, I still haven't figured out who they are in the story. I'm trying to see if I can find, it's Tracy. Alice. I don't think Louise. Louise is the one, the head counsel, the girl who's the counselor in charge of Barbara's group. And Annabelle's the one who gets them who was supposed to be watching the girls, but was not paying attention and probably was out partying, and it's so really intriguing. I definitely want to know what's going on. My mom, when she saw The God of the Woods, she was thinking, when I told her about the book, because she was with me when I bought it, she was actually thinking it was supernatural. I mean, it could still be, but I'm thinking that this is more metaphorical. The whole the reference to the God of the Woods. Like, maybe they'll make a reference to, like, maybe, sorry, I was looking at one of the blurbs on here, but I'm wondering if it's like, because I can't remember, there is a god in some mythologies that kind of is a god of the forest. But I don't remember what culture and the name or anything like that. But I think there is a god that kind of is in charge of the forest, in charge of nature and such. But so far, it's very intriguing. I definitely want to know what happened. Did they get killed? Did both kids get killed? Is there something supernatural going on? Did one of the adults kill them? Did they get killed by an animal or something? I'm really excited to find out. And, the way it's told makes it interesting, because you go back and forth between, not just between times, but timeline, but also between characters, because, like I said, it's multi-perspective. So you get one person's point of view, but then the next chapter is someone else, which can be annoying at the same time, because you get interested in that person and they're part of the plot, and then it's like, okay, now we're changing to someone else. I want to know what's going to happen next, and then you have to wait. and keep reading. So it's could be annoying, but it's also good because it keeps you reading and wanting to know. And it does, and I do want to know. I want to keep going. I want to keep reading. And then we have is the Bee Sting. I started reading this. I always thought this would be a great March read because it's in springtime read because Bee Sting, and then bees come out in the springtime, and then it takes place in Ireland in March of St. Patrick's Day. I mean, I really should have started this at the beginning of the month, but as always, I'm always in the middle of another book, so. So this one, you have, again, kind of another family drama. You have these two, we start with the perspective of the daughter. I know that, like The God in the Woods, it's going to go back and forth between perspectives. So we have, the first part is Cassie, the daughter Cassie. Her family, and Cassie is a teenage girl. She has a best friend named Elaine. And her family is very very rich. Her dad owns a lot of car business, mechanic businesses in different parts of, Ireland. And her best friend Elaine is kind of a diva, and she's likes fashion. She doesn't really care as much about her grades as Cassie does. She's very much just cares, her priorities are boys in fashion, and she really likes Cassie's mom, but Cassie is kind of ashamed of her mom, and she feels like her and Elaine are better suited as mother and daughter because they're a lot more alike personality wise and what their interests are, and Cassie probably is more like her dad in a lot of ways, and but her dad ends up losing his business in a different part of in the county, and it really kind of, their family kind of downsized and everything, and it really affects the family. And Elaine, no, I'm not sure, because at first I was thinking that why would that be the reason Elaine kind of turns her back and starts to ignore Cassie? But I'm starting to wonder if maybe that is part of it, because Elaine is very snobbish and very high maintenance and very much wants to hang out with the right people, the right crowd of people. She cares what people think about her, and she just start ignoring Cass around the same time. But I also think it has to do with the fact that this new teacher shows up at their school to teach them poetry. And stuff like, she introduces them to Sylvia Plath and all these famous poets. But of course, this is a very conservative school, and group of parents that are like, oh no, we can't have that. That's bad. You shouldn't be teaching these. This is naughty stuff. You shouldn't be teaching the kids about this. And it really, Cassie and Elaine, this really affects them. They get really into poetry, and their teacher, Cassie even buys, the teacher has wrote her own collection of poetry, and Cassie even buys it online, but it's not what she expected. The poems are a little disturbing and a little weird to her. So, and she's afraid to tell Elaine about it. So she avoids telling her. She doesn't tell her about when she gets the book of poetry. And it's also kind of small as well, so that surprises her too. She's very disappointed by it. But she ends up writing a really good poem that the teacher shares in front of the class. And I think that could be a contributing factor as well. She was giving Cassie attention and just ignoring Elaine. Not noticing Elaine at all. And so I think that could be a contributing factor. So, Cassie starts hanging out with another girl at the school, she's not a very popular girl. She's kind of, she's very smart, academically driven. She's keeps to herself. She cares about her grades. so a lot of these other girls make fun of her. A lot of these girls and boys at school make fun of her. They even make fun of her older sister. And Cassie does start hanging out with her because she feels ignored by Elaine. But then Elaine texts her and like, so and so likes you. You should come down to this pub we hang out at, this that they call the Drain. And she starts hanging out, making out with this boy that she barely knows, but he's attractive and seems to get her angst, and she gets his. And meanwhile, you have Elaine who you're making out with different boys, and in fact, she gets bored with the one that she's hooking up with. But Cassie and this one kid go to this like barn they have in the back of her house, in the back of Cassie's house. They start hanging out there, and he thinks it's like a bomb. It reminds him of a bomb shelter. And Cassie also starts talking about going to Trinity College, and she knows her dad went there. And of course, it will make him very excited, and he's very excited that she wants to go there. Meanwhile, Elaine's trying to, Elaine is starting to talk her out of it. Their plan was to go to college together, and she's like, "Oh, we can't go there. I don't want to go there anymore. Let's go to, the school in Dublin." And she's like, "Why do you have to listen to your dad? You don't have to listen to your dad. Just because this will make him happy, you don't have to do what makes him happy." Which I think there's something there with that, of why she's so, like, you don't have to make him happy. And I want to say Elaine's dad, part of how they know each other also is that Elaine's dad used to work for Cassie's dad. I could be wrong. I could be misremembering. That could be part of it, if I'm remembering correctly. And I do not like Elaine. Elaine pisses me off. She is such a terrible friend. She only, gives attention to Cassie whenever she needs Cassie. Whenever Cassie could make her look good or do something for her. Like, I think the only reason why she asked Cassie to come down with her to that pub is because she wanted Cassie to distract the other boy while she hooks up the one. And now, I mean, it worked out because Cassie kind of likes this boy. But he's also not that great of a boyfriend. I mean, granted, they're teenagers, so maybe that's why. But he's not really good at keeping, giving her attention. And they only hang. She doesn't know if they're exclusive or not, or if they're officially dating or not, because he doesn't call her that often. So she's very confused right now. And there's also this thing about how she's worried that she's gonna get in trouble because she used her parents' credit card to buy the poetry books, and now she of course feels like she wasted her money and she's gonna get in trouble. So she's but what ends up happening is that's when it was revealed that one of her father's businesses was closed down, and their mom blames their dad for it. Now I know the next section will be PJ. In the back description talks about how he's bullied, and he's bullied at school, and that he owes money to the school bully or something like that. That's what the back description implies. And I'm wondering if we're gonna get the perspective of Cassie and PJ's parents, Dickie, and Dickie's the dad, and then Imelda's the mom. I'm wondering if we're going to get their perspective as well. But I'm curious where we're going to go. But I'm liking it so far. So now before we left, I got to the second part, volume 2 of The Mill on the Floss by George Eliot. And I had read, I started with Middlemarch, even though people say you shouldn't start with Middlemarch because it's such a long, dense book. But I liked it. I had a good time with it, and it's one of my favorites. I mean, although I need to reread again. Going by the lines I was thinking of before, which is that, how do I know for sure something's my favorite until I read it more than once? And then we have, and then I read Silas Mariner, which, that was a sweet story. I did like that one, but it's not a favorite. Okay, so this one is about a brother and sister who live on a mill. Maggie and Tom, and then their parents. And their mom had two sisters. They married well. It, like, this reminds me, that dynamic reminds me of in Mansfield Park. There were three sisters. In that one, you had Fanny's two aunts, Miss Norris, and I cannot remember the family she stayed with. I cannot remember their last name, but she had that aunt. And then Miss Norris was just such a bully to her, to Fanny. And, like, Major Fanny knew she wasn't good enough, that she wasn't as good as her cousins. Her aunt was always sleeping, and she was kind of lazy, and she didn't really pay attention. And then you had Fanny's mom, who married a sailor, then he lost all his fortune, and Fanny had all these siblings, and that's why she ends up going to live with her cousins. And it reminds me of that situation where you had the one, and it's not exactly the same dynamics, but one of the sisters reminds me of Miss Norris in how she's very critical of Maggie and telling her how she's not as beautiful, and she needs, and her sister did a terrible job raising her daughter. She's always offering her opinion, and finally the dad, Mr. Tolliver, snaps at her, is like, I don't care what you think. No one asked for your opinion. And she is all like, how dare you? No one cares about what I think. No one wants to hear my opinion. It's like, you share your opinion all the damn time. So no, do not tell me no one wants to hear your opinion. No one lets you, so don't tell me no one lets you give your opinion, because you always put your 2 cents in. And, this woman is so annoying. I don't know who's more annoying, her or Miss Norris. But, I guess Aunt Norris. And so the dad, he doesn't want his son to end up being a farmer like him. So he has decided in the beginning of the book that he's going to send Tom to Bertram. That's their name. That's the family that Fanny lives with in Mansfield Park. The Bertrams. So he decides to send Tom to another type of education. This clergyman who's looking to tutor young boys into, to take on young boys and teach them. And he decides that Tom will get a better education, so that maybe in the future he will become a lawyer or something, or another type of profession like that, not a farmer. And Tom's not happy about that. He's like, I want to be a farmer. I want to be a farmer, and because it seems like such a fun, easy job. I don't want to be a lawyer. And there's a lot of subjects at school he learns that he's not very good at, and is very difficult for him, very hard, and so he just gives up, and he's like, oh, I don't have to learn why do I have to learn this? It's not important. Like Latin and stuff like that. And then, meanwhile, you have Maggie, the daughter, who's she's very rambunctious. She likes to run around and play. She doesn't act like the traditional lady. At one point when they're, on her case about her hair and stuff, she needs to brush her hair and do something with it because it looks all wild and untamed. And so she has a fit and decides to let Tom cut her hair. And she cuts it, and she realizes that was a mistake, because it was very uneven, and her mom freaks out. And she's she's very much a daddy's girl. Her dad is very forgiving of her antics. He's more focused on making Tom's antics. And he is, basically spoils Maggie. And Maggie's very close with her brother, but her brother's is very mean to her. Like, while he's away at his other school, the school he went to, the first school he went to, he had these rabbits, and he asked Maggie and one of the family groundskeepers to take care of the rabbits. And these are probably wild rabbits living out in the wilderness, and Maggie forgot, and they end up dead. And Maggie, of course, at the beginning is probably like 8 years old or something. So I'm like, of course she's going to forget. She's a kid. She doesn't understand that kind of responsibility. And, like, Tom, and she's so worried that Tom's going to get so mad at her and never forgive her. And I'm thinking, oh, she's probably exaggerating. There's no way that, because, I mean, come on. They're just, like, I'm an animal lover as much as the next person. But it's like, I don't think it would be, like, these are wild rabbits, most likely, so it's like, what is the big deal? Like, I mean, I could see him being a little disappointed, but I would think he would understand that Maggie's a little too young to be able to bear that kind of to have to remember that kind of responsibility. And of course, I was proven wrong, and he does get pissed off, and he's like, you're a terrible sister. You're not going to go fishing with us, because he got her, stuff for fishing. He was going to take her to the little pond. He drew out a fish. He's like, you can't hang out with me anymore. And how dare you forget to feed my rabbits. And he is such a little shit to his sister. And it just pisses me off so much as I'm reading this. I want to punch this kid. And, like, he reminds me of a lot of the younger siblings in Are You Afraid of the Dark episodes. And I just feel so bad because Maggie just wants him to make him happy. She loves her brother so much, wants to spend time with him and worships him. And her brother, and he's like, and it's just them, unless, they have cousins come over. And they do have a cousin who Maggie thinks is so beautiful, and she wants to hang out with her. She wants to hang out with her at the same time. She admires her cousin. And of course her brother, and it just, damn it, it's doing that thing again. Sorry, I'm gonna, like, lighten everything. And so, where was I? And at one point, like, Tom is still kind of ignoring Maggie. He's not paying attention to her. He's hanging out with their cousin and everything. And Maggie, feeling hurt, loses her temper and pushes her cousin in the mud. And her cousin has no idea what she did wrong. She's like, because she didn't do anything. She's just caught in the middle between these two siblings. And I get that, yeah. I mean, I'm a little more forgiving of Maggie because, I mean, she's a little bit younger. I think Tom should know a little bit better because he's like 13 at the time. So he's a little bit older to have some, to know when he's being unkind to his sister. But I guess you could say he's a teenage boy, early teens. But I'm more annoyed by him and more sympathetic to Maggie. And Maggie actually, in anger and realizing the shame and the guilt that what she did to her cousin, out of anger, she decides to run away because she's been threatening to run away with gypsies because she likes gypsies. She thinks they're great and they would be very kind to her and loving. So she runs away with them. Or she starts walking and finds a bunch of gypsies. And forgive me, I know I shouldn't say the word gypsies. That's a derogatory term. So I should say the Romani people. That's they call them gypsies in the book. Because, I mean, you've heard this book was written in like the 1800s. So the Romani people, she wants to go run away to live with the Romanis, thinking they'll be nice to her and they'll welcome her with open arms. And they end up finding her. These Romani people find her. And she is taken by them. And already there there's some shadiness going on there because, you know, they kind of take advantage. And she's kind of, because she's such a naive little girl, she accidentally reveals that she is rich. Of course, they could probably tell from the way she's dressed and everything. She, you know, her privilege is showing. So they trick her into, you know, and take from her. You see if she has anything worth to take. And she also, and then she over that those 30 minutes that she's with them, she does get a little nervous and realize, okay, these people they're not so friendly after all. They're a little too nosy. She does end up getting. They end up taking her back instead of keeping her, holding her hostage. And I was nervous. I was worried they would keep her there. You know, I mean, luckily for her, they let her go, and her dad is going the opposite direction, is coming the direction she's coming from. And they meet on the road, and he takes her in. And I think the only reason she didn't get in trouble was because her family was so happy that she was not dead, that she didn't get kidnapped, that it was like they decided, we're not going to get her in trouble. You know, we're not going to punish her. She didn't know any better. She was being dumb, but, you know, at this point, I'm just happy that she's alive and she's okay. Because she doesn't get in trouble after that. So Tom is going away to school, and this other boy shows about it. He's, you know, like I said, he struggles in there, but he's content. And then this other boy shows up at the school. He's told from his father this other boy is coming to the school. This boy, his father is, I think, a lawyer, and he actually works, his father is defending someone who tried to steal water, take water from the land, from the Tolvers' land as well. So their dad is not happy about them and decides to take him to court. And coincidentally, the boy is his son, who is told to have a hump. He is humpbacked. He is also going to the same school that Tom is going to. And Tom, of course, had these ideas put into his head that this kid is gonna be just like his father, he's told to believe is a bad person because him and his dad are, you know, he, you know, works for someone who's trying to steal their water. And he also thinks, of course, he has these young, naive ideas about the fact that this kid has a humpback, so there must be something wrong with him, and that he's not worth his attention. But reluctantly, he learns that this kid is not that bad. This kid, Philip is his name, that he's not that bad. He's actually very smart, and he actually knows things that Tom doesn't know. And they sort of become friends. But they have a very interesting relationship, and because they're friends, yet they're competitive with each other. And a couple times, Maggie is allowed to visit her brother at his new school. And Philip and Maggie become friends because she feels bad for Philip and sees that he's a very nice young man. And that she would like to be friends with him. And my belief is that when they get older, when they're young adults, that there's going to be some romance between her and Philip. But Tom's going to get in the way of that, I'm guessing. That's my belief is going to happen in the story. And the last book I have to talk about that I've read. Okay, let's see. Sorry, the stupid light is. I didn't position my blind so that the light wouldn't seep through. And then I listened to the third Gilmore by Kelly Bishop. So if you're a Gilmore Girls fan, Kelly Bishop plays Emily Gilmore, Lorelai's mom and Rory's grandmother. And she wrote a memoir about her life. Now, if you're interested in the memoir because of Gilmore Girls, she doesn't go into talking about Gilmore Girls until later in her memoir, because we go to the start of her life. Not like she talks a little bit about her childhood, mentions her dad being a like, I think he was a gambler and a drunk and stuff like that. He was not a great guy, and her mom got pregnant at a young age. In fact, her mom's story is similar to Lorelai's, and her grandmother was like Emily in a lot of ways. So she really, when she gets to Gilmore Girls, she actually connects in that way to the show in a lot of ways, and uses that as a way to understand Emily, see Emily through the, it's a way for her to understand her own grandmother by seeing, tapping into who Emily is and why she thinks the way she does. So I thought that was kind of cool that she could, like, relate with solid connection with Emily. And I doubt every actor gets the opportunity to really relate, and they just have to find something that can stir similar emotions or similar types of feelings to what the character feels. And so she mostly starts with, so we get a little background on how she's very close with her mom and how she started doing, she did ballet. She was, got involved in the the ballet and dance hall scene in New York. And her mom was her biggest supporter, but she was also honest with her and gave her a lot of great feedback and really helped her. She's a really powerful relationship with her mom. And we find out, and it starts with her, how her time on Broadway and a chorus line, in which I only know a little bit about a chorus line. I vaguely know the opening number that's like, I hope I get it. I hope I get it. That one that's very out of tune. I sang very out of tune. And of course, I know What I Did for Love. And Glee, the show Glee covered that song. I think Leah Michelle did a cover of that song, of What I Did for Love, and I have that on my iPod. And so I know a little bit. So I know only a little bit of, so I know very little about that musical. Not one of the ones I bought, not one of the back in the day when I used to buy CDs and would buy, there was a store in one of the malls I shopped at, and I would always, and it was a mall that was an hour away, so we didn't go there often. But when I got the opportunity to go, when we would go to that mall, I would go to that store. And then there was a Books A Million in that mall as well. So I would go to those two stores, the stores with the CDs. And the CD store also had a lot of other entertainment, like video games and stuff like that, and movies and all that. So, but I would always go to the CD section, and that's where I would get most of my CDs, unless I got them as gifts for Christmas. And I would get a lot of soundtracks, a lot of Broadway plays, musical soundtracks there. And I never got a chorus line, but yeah, so it was really cool, and I do love reading books that are about Broadway, the history of New York and Broadway. I think those are so much fun to read about, learning that history, and because it's just like Hollywood, just like movies, except for it's stage work. It's on the stage, but there are a lot of similarities, except for there's more rehearsals and stuff like that on a stage play up until the final product, and it's live. Like with a movie, movie or show, you're recording it, and then you present it, and you keep recording it and trying to get it right perfectly, and then someone can edit things, and then you put the final product on air or whatever, send it out into the world to be made into something that people can watch on a screen, on a big screen, or nowadays on a little screen. But it was just so much fun, and to learn about her history and who she was as a person, because I didn't know a lot about her as a person. And like, I didn't even start watching interviews from the actors until a few years ago. I was vaguely familiar with Edward Herrmann because he's in the Richie Rich with Macaulay Culkin. He plays his dad. It's him and John Larroquette, and I don't remember the actress who played the mom. But that was a really fun movie that came in the 90s. I never watched the one that was the Christmas Wish one that was supposedly a sequel, but it changed up the whole cast. The only people that were the same, I think, were the parents. But they might not have even been the same actors. Which, it's like, I kind of roll my eyes at that. I kind of wonder every time that would happen, when they would make sequels, and it wouldn't even be the same cast. Like, it's one thing if you do a sequel years and decades later, like the Cinderella movies, and it's animation, so you don't even see the actors, you just hear the voices, then okay, fine. But when it's live action and there's not that much time in between they do sequels, I'm like, and it's not the same people, I'm like, this is not going to be great. The best case scenario is going to be okay. But anyway, so yeah, Edward Herrmann plays the dad in the original. It's a fun movie. It's like this kid who's very rich. His dad owns like this big company, and has his own company, and Rich is kind of isolated from he doesn't have friends because he's a rich kid. You know, he doesn't really care about all he's not really close with his, because he has, he goes to school and everything, but he's not really close to any of his schoolmates. He doesn't really have much of a friendship with them. And his parents his dad has a business rival that wants to take over the business. So he decides to go to extreme measures of killing the parents when they're going on a plane to, go on vacation. They leave their son behind. They were like, he was going to come with them, but he convinced him to leave him home. And their plane crashes. There's a bomb on the plane that crashes. And it turns out Richie is led to believe his parents died in the plane crash. But we also find, that his butler paid some kids to come over and hang out with Richie and pretend to be his friend, that they want to be friends with him. And they actually do end up really liking him for real, and it's really fun because the kid has his own roller coaster, and, he has a McDonald's in his house, and a, kind of a hangout space. And it is just like, it's that whole montage of all the games these kids are playing while they're hanging out was really fun. But anyway, getting off track. So that's one of the movies I know Edward Herrmann from. And like, it was just, but anyway, so it was really fun reading her memoir and learning about her and her life and her career. And it was an audiobook, so she read the book herself, which was also fun. And Amy Sherman Palladino, the creator of Gilmore Girls, did the introduction, because her and Kelly are friends. And also along with Lauren Graham. So it's really, and like, Kelly is so different from her character. She's complete opposite, but she loves playing those characters. She's also did Dirty Dancing. She was the mom. And and I love her mentality and her attitude about her career and everything, and just reading her life, hearing her life story was really fun. And I would love to meet her. She's someone I would like to meet. I like to meet a lot of the cast. I would love to meet Edward Herrmann, but sadly, right before they did A Year in the Life, he passed away. So, which, if you watched it, they do honor him in the show, in those four long mini movies. And one more book thing, and then I've got something that's not book related that I want to talk about. Okay, so I did get, like I said, we went book shopping right before I left, and I got this novella. And there were a few other books that I was considering, but fantasy is always a safe bet for me because I'm gonna love it. Although I've expanded my reading horizons, it's a little safer and easier to do that whenever I get a book from like the Outpost Bookshop, because it's used book prices. But this is kind of Italian inspired world. It actually made me think of Engines of Empire, which I never did finish that trilogy. I would like to maybe someday, but I would probably have to rebuy the book or something. I mean, if I see it at the Outpost, maybe I will. Or I might just get it on Kindle. That could be something to consider. And I think I thought about doing that before, but anyway, because it's, so I'm just gonna, it's this, Italian-inspired world. And our main character, he's not as cutthroat as the rest of his family. And he's supposed to be taking over the business. And he discovers the fossil of a dragon eye, which might have powers. But there's an assassin who shows up and threatens to harm his family. And he has to unlock the powers of the dragon eye, and that might help him fight off the assassin. And it looks like there's gonna be a romance with his adopted sister Celia, but she's fits in more with the family apparently than he does. It sounds like. So it's going to be a little bit of a Clueless kind of situation with the two, or like what is that, Cruel Intentions situation with these two, where they're not related by blood, but they are like siblings. It just sounded really intriguing. I've looked at this book before, and I don't know if it's going to be serious. I mean, I hope it's not going to be serious, because it's kind of annoying when you buy a book and then you realize you're going to have to wait until the next book comes out. I mean, it doesn't say, I'm trying to, it doesn't really, there's nothing that says first book in a series. Let me check the side. Yeah, it doesn't say anything on the spine that implies it's going to be a part of a series. So hopefully it won't, because then Okay, and then the other thing I want to talk about is that I discovered a new channel on YouTube. It's kind of book adjacent. It's this channel and I'll put the link to the channel in my description box. But this was a really fun channel, because he reviews not only horror, teen and kids horror movies, but which some of them I don't have access to, because you got to be a member to watch some of his reviews, which is really annoying. I mean, I get that if you want to give the people who are willing to donate money to your channel and to help you out, if you want to make money off of YouTube, you got to give them special content that only specifically for them. And I get that, but sometimes that content is content that I want to watch, and I'm not going to be, and no offense to these people, but I'm not going to do the membership thing. It's just, that makes me anxious to do that. That's kind of tricky for. So it's kind of annoying. It's kind of disappointing, but I'm not going to hold it, I get over it. But anyway, but he also does reviews of Goosebumps, Are You for the Dark episodes, Goosebumps episodes, and the 2 spin-off shows that were Goosebumps related, which are the Haunting Hour and the Nightmare Room. And I actually remember catching some episodes. Well, just randomly channel surfing. I remember catching some of the episodes from both channels, or both Nightmare Room and the Haunting Hour. Like I vaguely remember watching some of them, but I watched and I decided to watch some of their his reviews of some of them, and like, it's funny, even when I just watch reviews where they show clips of a scary show or scary movie, it will still kind of freak me out a little bit, and I have to watch something like fun and happy and more positive, like a book related, right? An actual book, related content. Like last night I watched his review on an episode about a mascot that eats kids. Like, literally eats them. And also, I watched his review on the one that was like the kid who gets strapped and, becomes obsessed with this ice cream truck. And there were some creepy episodes. Like, the haunting hour and the nightmare room got a little more heavy, a little more intense and scary. Like, sometimes Great Are You for the Dark and Goosebumps did have episodes where kids didn't always survive. Well, although Goosebumps was more prone to, episodes where kids survived, but there were still consequences. But Are You for the Dark had a couple episodes where kids didn't always survive. Like, the Super Specs, the kids didn't. They got trapped. And so there were some episodes of these shows where it was like, it ended in a cliffhanger where you didn't know if it looked like everyone survived and everything's okay, but then something happens where they, oh no, these people are not going to survive. Like, there was a Scary Mary episode. He also did reviews. I originally discovered him because he did reviews for the newer Goosebumps show, which I actually liked both seasons. I enjoyed it. I mean, and I kind of like this, but I kind of like the story of the first season more of the newer Goosebumps. I just didn't care about it's only because I'm not a sci-fi person. I mean, it was still a good story and everything, but I'm just not a hardcore science kind of person, like I said. So that's why I still prefer, even if it had flaws in its storytelling, I still prefer the first season with the slapping and everything. So yeah, that's a fun channel, and like I said, that they talked to some creepy episodes. I keep looking for the one with the doll, the girl that discovered the doll that wants to take over her life, and that is one with Bailey Madsen. For those of you guys who watch if any of you watch Once Upon a Time, Bailey Madsen was she played younger Snow White in that show in the flashback, and then she was also played the sister, Jennifer Aniston's daughter, in Just Go With It. And that girl is going places. She's pretty good. She's a good actress. She has a lot of potential. I will look forward to seeing more of her. Hopefully when she's an adult, she'll do more stuff. But anyway, so yeah, I just wanted to talk to you guys about that channel a little bit. That it was a fun, that channel was really fun to watch, and and if you're like a fan of kids horror and like Are You for the Dark, Goosebumps, and all those shows, check out his channel if you want to, watch his reviews and his take on stuff. Like I said, I'll put the description in the link to his channel in my description box below, so you'll but anyway, hopefully this one will show up for you guys. If not, then it won't matter, all the stuff I just said to you guys. And I hope you guys are enjoying what you're currently reading, and I will talk to y'all later. Alright, bye!